When I was younger, I think my ego and pride was at the forefront, of my personality. So if somebody made a critique, I always took it as a personal attack. I always thought it was, I'm doing something wrong. And through a lot of therapy and personal growth, I've learned that can take a back seat now. And it's okay that it's there and it informs me. But ultimately, what I want is to be able to receive the critique and then really try to understand where it's coming from, especially if it's through an employee. So that sticks with me. I think about that often. I'm 100% comfortable with being held accountable if I do something wrong or if I say something that doesn't land correctly. I value being understood. So it's important for me to have a great communication just as a base for what I do, especially in leadership.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Business of Learning podcast. My guest here today is Gilbert Medina, who is the Director of Business Development and Sales at CCS. Gilbert, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thank you.
Tell everyone a little bit more, Gilbert, about CCS, what you guys are all about, what is the company, and anything else you'd like to share for context.
Thank you. Yeah. CCS is a AV systems integrator. I think that title sometimes carries preconceived notions or expectations that we're just doing audiovisual. But in today's technology climate, everything that we touch is, I would say, IP-based or network-based. So we're a lot more than just an AV integrator. We're a solutions provider. We are a support structure. And a lot of times we are teaching and showing people how to maintain their AV systems.
That's so awesome. And I would love for you to share the origin story of this thing, because as we were speaking previously in a conversation where you were telling me how it all came to be, I found it such an interesting story. So if you would be open to sharing that.
Yeah, absolutely. So for me personally, I have been working for CCS for 6 years, but I've been doing AV, I would say, most of my life. I grew up doing music. I started performing at age 8. I've been involved in church AV since I can remember. And really, with the change of the economy in 2008, I was looking for a job that was something that I was passionate about. And I had IT background, and I had no idea that my professional training would match up with this opportunity to work in the AV space. I worked with the Cosmopolitan Hotel in 2010 as an operator. I started just as a technician and worked my way up through the ranks. And really, that's what got me excited about AV as a career, and had no clue that we would end up where we are today. As an operator, all of the day-to-day challenges, from equipment dying and poor planning or just not understanding what the requirements were, I really got a behind-the-scenes look at what it takes to build and sustain systems like that. And as of 2016, I've been doing this full-time, and I absolutely love it.
That's so awesome. And I also found it so funny when you were mentioning the founding story of the company as well. Where, maybe actually I was gonna say, maybe I'll say it, but I think you'll say it better than I would. So yeah, if you want to share that.
One of the coolest things about CCS and what I learned at my first national sales summit was our CEO, Joao Camargo, talking about the origin story of CCS. First of all, I was curious about the title or the name CCS. And I learned it was commercial computer systems. And I thought that's interesting because we don't really deal with we use computers, but we're not a computer company. And from his keynote speech, he was talking about 30 years ago, he was selling software, and every meeting he was taking, people weren't so much interested about the software, but they wanted to know about these projectors he was bringing to these presentations. And eventually, I think he was frustrated, at least from the story he was telling. He thought, well, what if I pivot? What if I start selling these projectors? And, is there a market for this? And here we are 30 years later. He told us, he shared in his story that this first year he did 60,000 in sales. And last year we did 175 million approximately. So it's been quite a journey for him. And, the company's been around for a long time, and I'm excited to be a part of it.
Yeah. And it's so exciting because to me, it reminds me of so many entrepreneurial stories where they're like, yeah, and this is happening, and there was this pivotal moment where it completely changes the entire dynamic of what they used to do, but it's just like fully embracing it and just going full on, and look where the company is now, which is so awesome. I always love hearing stories like that.
I agree. Yeah.
And for the company, as long as you've been around, what are some of the pivotal things that you said that there's obviously many lessons along the way. What are some of those that really have stuck with you and impact the way that you view company building and the way that you try to help CCS keep growing?
Yeah, that's a great question. One of the key, I think I would say, pillars or one of the mission statements with CCS is relationship building. And
Yep.
my understanding from my personal experiences outside of CCS is that is a key factor in building a relationship with a vendor or with any kind of support system, is having a good relationship. And what I've learned through the company culture as well as my own experience is 100% is building relationships. And obviously there are a lot of things that are required there, communication,
Yeah.
transparency. But
Trust.
yeah, 100%. I think all of those things, for me, the monumental item for CCS has been relationship building.
That's interesting. And does that relationship building, where does that usually come from for you guys? I know obviously there's the company has grown to a 9-figure company, so it's incredible, right? But
Mhm.
when it comes to the startup process of where these companies usually start those conversations with you, how does that come about usually?
So typically for us is a need, and we get a lot of B2B word of mouth, referrals, and it's somebody reaching out for some reason. And typically for me, I'm not looking to make a sale when I talk to somebody. I'm looking to understand what the need is. And
Yes.
I'm happy to refer, associates or other companies. If I'm not a good fit, I really want what's best for the client and not what's best for our company. Or
Yeah, that's
like
key.
a lot of people are driven just by sales. In my case, I want to build a relationship. I would rather a customer say, hey, Gilbert helped us get with the right person, and there's going to be an opportunity in the future to be part of the conversation again. And sales opportunities will come. We get a lot of bids, opportunities to quote projects, but ultimately, I want to be part of the conversation.
Yeah, that's so interesting. And I think it goes back to always being willing to give value and just help them first. I think it's so common nowadays. And you tell me if you agree with this, that the first intention of salespeople, why there's such a bad connotation with salespeople, is that they just look to close. They just look
Yeah,
like it's like that commission breath, right? That people
yeah,
talk about.
exactly,
But
exactly.
there's never the, hey, what are the things that you're going through? How would this be applicable to you? Is this the right fit for you? So as
Yeah,
opposed to helping people make the right decision, people just want to get the sale or close the
yeah.
sale, which I think breaks a lot of those relationships. Are you familiar with Adam Grant?
I'm not familiar with Adam Grant.
So Adam Grant is an author and a million other things as well. But he wrote a book called Give and Take.
Okay.
And it's basically on the idea of, hey, there's people who are givers and people who are takers. And no matter what you're doing in what scenario, every time you give, every time you think about the other person first, you will succeed later down the line, which your story reminded me of that. Hey,
Yeah.
even if right now it doesn't happen, there's things later down the line that maybe could happen. And that's not the
Yeah.
intention, but the relationship built and the foundation
Yeah.
is already always there. So yeah, I wanted to share that. So that's
Are
really,
you
really
are
awesome.
you familiar with Gary Vaynerchuk?
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, so Gary Vaynerchuk, one thing that I take from him is he says, you always got to bring the value first, give it away.
Yeah.
And then when there's an opportunity after you've built that relationship, if there is that trust, then you can ask.
Yeah.
And that
100%.
really has changed my mind 100% about how I approach these things.
Mhm.
I show up, what can I contribute, right? What can I do for this person with zero thought? And that takes some training, no thought of what can I get from this, but how
Mhm.
can I show up, leave a mark, make an impression. And
Mhm.
then if everything works the way that I'm hoping it will work, there will be opportunities in the future.
Yeah, 1,000,000%. A million percent agree with that. So,
Yeah.
so cannot overstate that enough. But
Great.
yeah, before we actually started the recording in the podcast, we all had another discussion where I asked you the question. It seemed like this is applicable to so many industries, right? CCS can help pretty much everybody, but
Yeah.
oftentimes when you can help everybody, it's hard to help anybody
Yeah.
because there's so much opportunity, but also
Yeah.
many challenges along there. So, I would love for you to share kind of maybe the biggest industries that you guys do partner with, the industries that you help, and maybe some of the challenges of being able to help everybody when it comes to being a company that is so versatile when it comes
Yeah.
to the solutions that you provide.
That's a great question. So I think that industries where communication is important, whether that communication is peer to peer or to a group or to the masses, uh, there's typically technology associated with delivering that message.
Mhm.
So whether that message is static in the form of marketing, digital signage, and presenting video, that we're good at that. But at the
Yeah.
same time, what we're doing right now is communicating point to point. What are the components required to make that communication happen? So
Mhm.
there is no limit on what industry requires our services. But to answer your question, it really turns into being able to understand the challenge and the deliverables that are being asked for. And,
Mhm.
are we a good fit for that? For example, some businesses are incredibly secure when it comes to their IT systems, banks, most financial institutions. So, can we provide, as a service provider, can we bring equipment that can live in that ecosystem and work within the constraints that they have? I like to think that CCS understands those needs and we can provide that. But I think that a challenge for another company would be that they might not know the protocols and the standards required to make that happen.
Interesting. And I would love to throw a question at you that I'm
Yeah.
sure you've gone a million times before, but I think it would paint a good picture here. If someone comes to you, a company comes to you, a leader, whatever it might be, and they say, "Yeah, everything sounds great, but why don't I just go with the usual presentation platforms like PowerPoint or whatever else that I could do? Like, what's the difference there?" What would you say back to them?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I run into that a lot. So thank you for bringing it up.
Like I know he on million
Yeah.
outlets because like every day.
Yeah, especially with clients that don't have maybe budget or financials available to make this happen.
Yeah.
We do have to find either a business justification or some reason for us to be selling our services. I think the number one thing is the end user support or customer service aspect. I think that, to your point, if you're going to do a presentation and you're just going to use a platform like PowerPoint, for example, you're going to be limited to the skills or abilities of the person who's operating versus having a company like CCS where you dream it up and you say, here, like, this is what I want. And we have case studies and we have, specific examples where we can bring, either design elements or even, previous jobs and say, here's what we did for X customer. Here's what it looks like, to do this type of delivery. And then bring, real life examples and budgets and say, here's what, we've done the legwork. We have a proven track record or receipts, as they say. Here are the receipts to those jobs. And sometimes we don't win them, even with the receipts, and that's okay. But I think to answer your question, that's the number one thing we can provide is that we have history and we have experience, and that's not always available.
Yeah, and I think that's awesome too because it goes back to what we were saying before because it gives them all the information to make the decision. And if it's not the right fit, then that's okay. But at least they have everything and what they are missing out on if they don't pursue, which is a decision that they have to make for themselves, which is obviously I guess a good way to always have that relationship and that conversation too.
If I can add, in a previous company that I worked for, I used to work in the motorsports and action sports industry.
Oh, wow.
And we used to sell parts for high performance motorcycles. And we would have people that would call in because their friend had, this piece of equipment, a muffler or whatever it would be. And they would call and say, hey, I want this for my bike. And I learned from real time conversations with technicians and engineers where they would say, well, hold on, why are you purchasing this? Why do you need it? And the customer, well, I like how it looks or I like how it sounds. Yeah. And then the guys would really take the time to help the customer make an informed decision and say, you can purchase this, but this other thing is a better fit. Sometimes it's not more money. Sometimes it's lower cost, but sometimes it can be a higher cost. But I think making an informed decision is super important for any organization.
That's so awesome. So awesome. And I'd love to hear from you. What are some of the best actually, let's go the other way. What are some of the worst characteristics? What are some of the worst mistakes that your customers or your dream clients usually make that doesn't allow them to achieve the results that you guys are able to provide with them?
I'll give you that's a great, and you keep coming with the great questions. I'll give you the top three in my case.
Sure.
The number one, I think that my associates would agree, is understanding the scope of what the challenges or the needs are. Sometimes people say, and I'll give you a real life example. A customer can say, well, we want to, put 400 displays over this property and we're going to provide digital signage. And so we'll put a proposal together, we'll present it, and we don't get the job. And that's totally okay. That happens.
Sure.
And we'll get a call a month later. Hey, we bought it from this other company. We have no idea how to connect these. Like right now, we're having to walk around with USB drives and plug them in and deliver the message. The difference is we were providing a unified, server-based solution where one person can log into a platform, maybe it's cloud-based, what have you. And that's part of the solution was never communicated in a way where the customer understood because they didn't understand the greater scope of their project.
And so they had a lack of, sorry to interrupt you, but so they had a lack of understanding of their own problem.
Yeah.
Interesting. Go ahead.
So I think that's the biggest issue that we run into is we need to make sure that we communicate to them, here, or maybe we're mirroring or reflecting to them. Here's what you're telling me you need. but from experience, here are the other challenges that maybe you're not considering. And I think that that's the top problem. Next to that, the other two would be budgetary constraints. A lot of times decisions are made because we don't have the right budget and we start to delete equipment, or a common term in our industry is value engineer. We're going to re-engineer this just to bring a better value.
Yeah.
And ultimately not communicating what's going to be lost when we remove that equipment. I think a lot of people in my position don't do a good job at communicating those issues. So
that's so interesting.
That's something that I take personal pride in explaining to people. Hey, I had a similar situation. We reduced the equipment, we reduced the cost, but here are the challenges we had after we did that. And then number 3 is poor project management. I think that a lot of times clients come into these projects and maybe, it could be $100,000, it could be $1 million, and they don't have somebody who understands how to manage the deliverables on both ends. We're on the hook for the technology systems, but maybe there's construction coordination, maybe there's electrical, there's a lot of other moving parts that have to be coordinated. And if the customer doesn't have somebody, a stakeholder who really understands that process, that can be a huge hurdle for us.
It sounds to me like they are all in a way intertwined, because the lack of education, or I guess lack of understanding of their own problem, leads them to prioritizing the wrong thing, which leads them to think prioritize the budget over the actual efficiency, which leads them to having the bad problems on the back end with the product. And it's like that cycle. Am I correct when saying that?
You're 100% correct.
Oh, that's so interesting. And it's what are some of the things that you guys do? You mentioned obviously mirroring. Hey, it sounds like this is what you're telling me, but here's what you should probably pay attention to. What are some of the other things that you try to converse with them about to have them have that informed decision that we spoke about earlier?
Yeah. And tell me if I'm understanding your question correctly.
Sure.
When we are brought an opportunity or a project scope, whether or not we're a good fit, number one is setting the baseline. What are you asking for? And then in that conversation, making sure they understand the greater scope, or the bigger picture, if you will. From a 30,000 foot view, here's what we're seeing, here's what you're asking for. And maybe at this point, we're having a budget conversation. You have X amount of dollars to secure this project, and this is what it's going to look like. So I think that's priority number 1. Number 2 is, are we a good fit? If you're asking for a system that is not our area of expertise, I don't want to waste the customer's time in saying, oh yeah, no, we're great at AI integration. And if we're not good at AI integration, what's the point? Why would I even, waste their time? So I think being self-aware and knowing where our limitations are 100%, has to be part of the conversation. And then the last one is, can I deliver what you're asking for? Is this realistic? Do we have the bandwidth? Do we have the resources to execute this project? If we're going to go under contract and you're going to ask me to deliver this, by April 1st, which is a few weeks away, that's just unrealistic. But it's my job to make sure that they understand that that's unrealistic.
That did answer my question. It's just being transparent all the way through. As much as possible, like really just holding their hand throughout and like, hey, here's kind of what we think needs to happen throughout this process. Okay, awesome. Very, very cool. And is there, you obviously mentioned Gary Vee, and I'm assuming most people would be familiar with it. If you're not, then please go search up Gary Vee.
Yeah.
But if are there any other maybe entrepreneurs or any other books you've read, documentaries that impacted the way that you view company building, or how you try to act on a daily basis to maintain the growth at CCS?
Wow, that is a great question. The first book that comes to mind, something I read when I started managing the previous company I worked with, is a book called Radical Candor. I believe Kim Scott is the author for that. And it's all about leadership and how to approach leadership, building relationships with your employees. And the one thing that stuck out to me, there's a section where she talks about respect. And unfortunately, as leaders, we are looking for respect. And and this is how I lead personally. There's something about being accountable when there's critique involved. When I was younger, I think my ego and pride was at the forefront, of my personality. So if somebody made a critique, I always took it as a personal attack. I always thought it was, I'm doing something wrong. And through a lot of therapy and personal growth, I've learned that can take a back seat now. And it's okay that it's there and it informs me. But ultimately, what I want is to be able to receive the critique and then really try to understand where it's coming from, especially if it's through an employee. So that sticks with me. I think about that often. I'm 100% comfortable with being held accountable if I do something wrong or if I say something that doesn't land correctly. I value being understood. So it's important for me to have a great communication just as a base for what I do, especially in leadership. So
No, interesting.
yeah, when you asked, that's the first thing that popped into my mind.
Yeah, it sounds like it's like the awareness of the situation, but
Mhm.
as opposed to what you used to do before, which is, hey, straight on, this is, you're offending me. It's like,
Yeah.
I'm aware that this is what's happening, and I'll handle it this way instead, to have that constructive feedback and criticism and find the right solution, as opposed to stop hating me. I don't want to be hated.
And if I can add,
Go ahead. Yeah.
after years of doing something, hopefully you become good at it.
Yeah.
So when you have a little bit of a track record, I think that it's easy to fall into this area of pride where you're like, no, I'm good at this, right? I'm good at these solutions, or I'm good at technology. So when somebody pushes back, I think it's a common thing, especially for young men, to feel attacked. Like, no, 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 I did it right. You must be wrong. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so the reading her statements about building trust and building, I think that's the one book that really sticks out to me.
Awesome. Really, yeah. Thank you for answering that. I always like having. I'm sure you can see some of the books here on the back.
Yeah.
But I always like adding more to the list. There's more outside of the office too. But yeah, thank you for answering that. I always love
Yeah,
adding
of
to the list.
course. No
Now, I have a couple final questions here for you.
Sure.
Gilbert. One is a question that I've been asking everybody, and then we'll get to the last question as well. But here's the first one. Um, let's say you had a magic wand, amazing magic wand that you can just wave, and this wand can solve only one thing in the business, a challenge, an obstacle, whatever it might be, that would allow you to keep achieving the growth that you're looking for the company. What's the one thing that you like to solve right now?
Oh, that's a tough one.
Yeah, there's not that many, but just one.
Yeah. The number one thing that came as soon as you asked, you said magic wand, and this is what I thought of. I think that supporting your employees and supporting the people who are part of your team, who help you build it, is, in my opinion, one of the most important things about growing a business. I don't just mean that as, money. Money's great. We all need to earn a living, but I think that understanding what people need, understanding how they receive appreciation is super important. So for somebody who requires quality time, is being able to provide that to that person, being able to communicate with them, and similar to the client, can I listen to what they're saying and can I hear beyond the words? I think that in the corporate environment, we're often limited to, we're trying to be on our best behavior and use the best words. And, we're like, you and I, we're talking here.
Yeah.
Can I look past the things you're saying? And is there a trend? Is there some subtext where, if I really do care about this person, can I pick up on that? Can I perceive what they're really saying? So if I had a magic wand, it would be that all leaders could just pick up on that. That's so that we could provide better support for them.
I like the words hear beyond the words. I like that. I've noted that down. So really, really awesome. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
And final question that I have here for you, Gilbert. It's actually not a question from me. It's a question from my last guest to you.
Okay.
And they had no idea who you were. So
nice.
Are you ready for the question?
I'm ready for the question. I'm nervous.
So here it is. Usually it goes well. I think you'll be okay. So here's the question. If you could redo a step in your career, is there such a step? And if there is, what would that be?
That's a great one. The step would be my education. I think that when I went to college, I was young and I was confused about what I wanted to do. I think I had lofty goals, and I, on purpose, didn't take any business classes. Most of my friends, I would say 80% of my friends, were either business majors or had a business minor. And for whatever their reasons, they all thought, we're going to go down this path. And for me, I went to a private liberal arts school, and I thought, oh, I'm going to be a music major, and this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. And I don't know how that could have been communicated better for me. But when I got dropped in, into the deep end of business, and I started doing customer service, and I started getting promoted into management, I think I had a natural ability for a lot of this. But ultimately, I didn't know, there was no preparation for me. So a lot of what I learned was on the job. It was on the fly, picking up from other good leaders, other entrepreneurs who have done it. And, if I could go back and do something again, it would be my education. I definitely would take some business courses. And, I'm lucky that I am where I am. And I've had a knack for sales and building relationships, but that's the one thing I would do over.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. And I think
Yeah.
on your side as well, just based on my conversation with you, you're such an easy person to speak with. Is like you're very charismatic. It's like an easy flow of conversation. So I'm sure that also, regardless of the education part,
Yeah.
not being there, it helps you along the way as well.
It definitely has. Yeah, I feel that way, but I love that question. And if I could go back, right, 20 years, 25 years, and I could do something again, I'd be like, man, I'd probably just stick it out and do my time 4 years and get a business degree. That would be really helpful.
Awesome. Well, Gilbert, thank you so much for your time. This has been such an awesome
Thank you.
conversation. I really appreciate you. Where should people go if they want to learn a little bit more about you, but also a little bit more about CCS?
I'm on LinkedIn. They can search me, Gilbert Medina. I'm in Las Vegas. CCS, you can go to ccsprojects.com and you can go to our corporate website. And then you can, based on location, you can find, I work for the Nevada, Utah, Idaho division. You can go through there. There's case studies, information. There's a map. There's a contact us page. So they can reach us there.
Amazing. Gilbert, thank you. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much.